Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. I am Dave Biddle flying solo on today's show. A lot to get into. Want to mainly focus on the Buckeyes' health situation. Ryan Day doesn't like talking a lot about injuries, but he kind of reversed course yesterday and was pretty open about it. Now, I'm sure he's not telling us everything in the world specifically about these guys, but let's get into it. I thought overall what I took away from the press conference yesterday was a positive vibe. You know, obviously 5 games into a season playing a violent sport, there are going to be injuries, but it felt like maybe the Buckeyes had more than their share of injuries. But some good news here. We're going to get into that. First thing, Jordan Hancock, Ryan Day said a few weeks ago that the injury Jordan Hancock suffered in camp, he didn't specify what it was, but he did say, quote, it was a significant injury. So Ryan Day said that Jordan Hancock suffered a significant injury in camp. Basically indicated that they're fortunate it wasn't season ending, or even almost season ending. But he hasn't played yet this year, but he is now back practicing at full speed, and the hope is they're going to get him back after the bye week against Iowa. I might hold him out until Penn State. Speaking of holding out guys at least until Penn State that might return, we'll get to that in a minute. But good to hear that Hancock's practicing at full speed. Won't play this week against Michigan State. Hoping to get him back after the bye, although just get him back by Penn State because Iowa, you could probably throw the scout team defense out there and Iowa couldn't score. So don't rush anybody back. Speaking of which, but it's great news because Hancock, there was all kinds of buzz about Hancock during the offseason. Played great in the spring. There was talk that even if Denzel Burke was, playing well, that Hancock was going to give him a run for his money. And as we know, Denzel Burke not playing well. So they need Hancock out there. Love what I'm seeing out of J.K. Johnson, though. Had a chance to ask Jim Knowles about that yesterday. J.K. Johnson is a dude. I mean, he's out there as a redshirt freshman. He has no fear. He's one of the fastest guys on the team. He's aggressive, and he just competes. He's confident. Knowles said just the way he competes for the ball. And he's got a great punch at the line of scrimmage. So he's good, at man press, which is what they like to do. That's another reason I think that Denzel Burke might be struggling is because he's so used to playing zone coverage, at least from last year, and now they're having him do man press, and he just doesn't seem comfortable doing it. But he's got really good coaches, and I still believe in Denzel Burke. But hopefully they can get Jordan Hancock back healthy. Again, for the Penn State game is what I'm looking at. That's great that Iowa is the target date. How about wait an extra week, get him back for Penn State? All right. So Coach Day said he is hoping that Jaxon Smith-Njigba, TreVeyon Henderson, and Cam Brown will all play this week at Michigan State. Listen, if JSN is cleared by the medical staff, that's great. That doesn't mean he can't immediately re-injure that. We know nothing lingers longer than hammies. They brought him back too early, in my opinion, against Toledo. He re-injured it. I would hold him out at least until Penn State. I don't care if he's cleared for this game or not. If you can't beat Michigan State and Iowa without him, you're not a national championship team anyway, right? This is not a good Michigan State team. We'll get into that in a little bit. So even if he's cleared, which I don't know if he will be by the medical staff, do not play him, in my opinion. Keep him out until Penn State. Just my opinion. I expect TreVeyon Henderson will play. He was, that was a surprise even to the coaching staff. I'm not sure what happened during warmups. I'm guessing, this is just a guess, I feel like it's an educated guess, that if that was a big game and he tweaked something that they would have been like, he would have been like, I'm playing, and they would have been like, you're playing. But they were playing Rutgers, and Mayan Williams was just playing great. And I think that was a precautionary move, holding TreVeyon Henderson out. Again, just speculation on my part. They didn't say it was precautionary. They just said something happened in warmups, and they didn't feel like he could go. But when you're playing Rutgers, they probably felt like we're going to definitely err on the side of caution. Cam Brown, another one they're hoping they get back this week. Poor kid can't stay healthy. 5th-year senior. Such lack of depth at corner right now with Hancock hurt, with Cam Brown hurt, only 6 scholarship corners on the roster, Denzel Burke not playing well. Hey, at least they got those freshmen. At least J.K. Johnson's playing well as a redshirt freshman. I like Jair Brown as a true freshman. We even saw Ryan Turner get in there, had a sack as a true freshman. So hopefully those guys can play. Well, no, hopefully they're all cleared. Even if Jaxon is cleared, I'm good with him sitting out this game. And frankly, the Iowa game too. Give him this week, give him the bye week, give him the Iowa week, and then hopefully by Penn State he's good to go. And not just cleared, but like past the point where that hammy's going to linger. Yeah, so Jim Knowles mentioned that Kourt Williams is another guy that I was wondering about. I asked Jim Knowles about this yesterday. By the way, Jim Knowles' press conferences are just fantastic. I'll get to that in a second. He should start having, I tweeted about this yesterday. Knowles should start having his press conferences at the local comedy club here in Columbus, the Funny Bone. I mean, he just was cracking up the media as he always does. Every one of his press conferences since he's been here at Ohio State have been excellent. Yesterday's was the best. Fantastic. If you haven't seen the video, get on our site, get on it anywhere on YouTube. You can do a search for it. I'd prefer if you went on our page and watched our video, but just watch the Jim Knowles press conference from yesterday. It is like 20 minutes of just awesome insights into the defense and hilarity. So awesome insights into the defense and hilarity. So great stuff. But I asked about Kourt Williams. I said, there's a lot of buzz about Kourt Williams in the preseason. You guys were talking him up a lot. The coaches were, his teammates were, voted captain. There was talk we got to find a role for Kourt because he's that true hybrid safety outside linebacker, and those are hard to find, Knowles said. But he's barely played. He's played, I think, a total of 42 snaps in 5 games. A total of 42 snaps in 5 games. Obviously, most of those in garbage time. And Knowles said simply that he's banged up. Kourt's another guy they just can't. He's like Cam Brown a little bit. Just can't seem to stay healthy. But they like him, but they want him to get fully healthy before they put him out there. And as we all know, Ohio State's got depth for days at safety. And not just bodies, but like talented guys. When Sonny Styles is a third-teamer, when Kai Stokes is a third-teamer, you're deep at safety. And I know those guys are true freshmen, but still. Absolutely love it. Tanner McAllister gets hurt last week, and Cam Martinez can't play. And what happens? They put Kai Stokes in there, and he holds the fort down. One week when McAllister was hurt, they put Cam Martinez in there. He played great, I thought. At least played very well. So a lot of depth there at safety. How about this? Speaking of Jim Knowles. So at Media Day, Ryan Day was asked the question, what are your expectations for the defense this year? You were 59th in the country in total defense last year, and you didn't even really play many good offenses. That was almost a misleading stat. They're actually worse than that, if you do the advanced metrics, because it wasn't like they were playing top offenses and they were ranked 59th. They were playing mostly shaky offenses, and they were ranked 59th in the country. They were awful defensively last year. Oregon kept running the same play. Ohio State just never adjusted. They just kept crashing the defensive ends. Horrible coaching last year. And then Knowles comes in with, basically the same guys. Yeah, they're a year older. And now they're a top 10 defense. Ryan Day said at Big Ten Media Days, his expectations to have a top 10 defense nationally. And people are like, okay, yeah, sure, guy. I mean, I wasn't saying that, but a lot of, hear a lot of people like in the media saying, oh, okay, yeah, Ohio State's going to have a top 10 defense this year. Well, guess what? Right now, Ohio State is ranked 10th in the country in total defense. And I don't feel like they've even like completely clicked yet. I mean, this is just game 5 of the Knowles era. I mean, they're going to get better. It's just like we saw in 2019, my friends. Coaching is so important. 2018 Buckeyes, awful on defense under Greg Schiano. 2019 under Hafley, #1 defense in the country. Okay? Last year, terrible under Kerry Combs and Matt Barnes. Bring Knowles in, top 10 defense. And I love the way they're playing. It's not just the stats. Fast, physical, mixing things up, confusing the opposing quarterback, looking like a silver bullet defense. I'm here for it. So, Jim Knowles, excellent hire. Absolutely love it. And again, his press conferences are fantastic because he's witty. I mean, he's so intelligent, and he's got that Philly like tough guy in him too, where he likes going back and forth a little bit with the media too. So he can be a little bit, I don't want to say testy because that's not the vibe you get at all. You get that he's cool, but he's not afraid to like spar with you a little bit. I love the guy. All right. Thoughts on the matchup against the Spartans. So the Buckeyes opened as 25.5-point favorites. You don't see that very often when you play Michigan State, right? You're favored by 25.5. Well, that's gone up. Money's going toward the Buckeyes. Now the Buckeyes are favored by 26.5. This is a reeling Michigan State team. They were 11-2 last year. Everybody had them picked in the top 15 this year, and they've lost 3 straight games, and they don't look good at all. Minnesota beat them 41-7. I mean, Maryland, I think, is actually a pretty good team. So, I mean, last week, Michigan State lost to Maryland. No, that's not anything to be embarrassed about, in my opinion. I mean, score wasn't a blowout. It was 27-13. So it wasn't like it was that close, but it wasn't a blowout. But that Minnesota game is the one that I look at. I mean, I don't know what's going on with Michigan State. I didn't see this coming. Shows you how important Kenneth Walker the third was to them. And Peyton Thorne is a little banged up. I'm not sure what the injury is. He's been struggling. I thought he might have a solid year. He was pretty solid last year for the most part. Peyton Thorne was. Hasn't been good at all this year. They're just bad. And you got to wonder, because I was thinking, frankly, when they hired Mel Tucker, I was like a little skeptical. And I've always liked Mel because, when he's at Ohio State, that was when I was first on the beat. His first year at Ohio State was 2001. My first year on the beat was 2002. Good first year to be on the beat because they won the national title that year. And I got to know Mel a little bit. He was there in 2003 a little bit, 2003 as well with the Buckeyes before moving on with the Cleveland Browns. He's had a really good career. And when they hired him from Colorado at Michigan State, I was like, okay, man, let's see if it works. I was a little skeptical. And then they had a shaky first year. And then they had a great year last year, 11-2. And then they gave him that $95 million contract, $95 million over 10 years, guaranteed. Now, he could be fired with cause and it wouldn't be guaranteed, but losing games, as they say, is not for cause. You'd have to do something like illegal or do something where he'd get in trouble, where legally it would be firing him for cause, or that $95 million is guaranteed. Okay. And you got to wonder now, like, did they jump the gun a little bit? Or is this year the aberration? Last year's what we can expect from Michigan State. I don't know, but they look terrible. Now, that also makes them dangerous a little bit in my book. I think Ohio State's going to be fine. They're going to win this game comfortably, but this is a Michigan State team with their backs against the wall, everybody telling them how horrible they are. They're playing at home. They have nothing to lose. They're going up against the big dog in the Big Ten, a team that has owned them in East Lansing since 1999. That's the last time Michigan State beat Ohio State in East Lansing was 1999 when Nick Saban was their head coach. So, again, I think Ohio State's going to be fine. I like this matchup for the Buckeyes, but still can't overlook Michigan State. Can't overlook them. They still have talent. And they're going to pull out all the stops. It's going to be kind of maybe what Rutgers did, but with better talent, and probably not Mel Tucker running across the field to yell at Ryan Day. Probably not. And probably Ohio State not doing a fake punt late in the game. I know we're not going to get into whether or not that was a real fake punt or Mirko did that on his own. Again, I think Mirko had the option of doing it. I don't think they told him one way or the other, but whatever. We're not going to get into that. But, even though I just kind of did, right? Yeah, I expect the Buckeyes will be fine. But, again, Michigan State at home, even though Ohio State's owned them there, that doesn't mean they always will. And backs against their wall, a team that everybody picked in the top 15, and they can – I don't want to say make their season, but pretty much make their season. They'll make their season if they beat Michigan again. That's the one team they really want to beat, obviously. That's why I kind of like Michigan State, right? The enemy of your enemy is your friend. Except for this week, we don't like Sparty, but the enemy of your enemy is your friend. So I've kind of always liked Michigan State, especially now they keep having former Ohio State assistant coaches as their head coach. I like Mark D'Antonio a lot at Ohio State. Great defensive coordinator, speaking of 2002. So, again, I like this matchup for Ohio State. Peyton Thorne's not playing well. The Buckeyes are going to get after this Michigan State offense, which is very limited. And Ohio State, you're not going to slow them down over 60 minutes. So I expect the Buckeyes to win comfortably. But don't look at Michigan State lightly because they're going to come out and pull out all the stops. Mentioned this earlier, Mayan Williams. I don't even know. What are they going to do with TreVeyon Henderson's completely healthy? Because Mayan Williams has proven that he needs not just like 10 carries a game. And I'm not even really down on TreVeyon. It's just Mayan is just playing great. He's not playing good. He's not playing really good. He's playing great. Okay, and it's not just the physicality, how he runs over guys. He's got deceptive quickness. He can make guys miss. And then, of course, he can knock you over too. And he always falls forward. What's one of the signs of every great running back? They always fall forward when they're getting tackled. You don't knock them backwards. Even if you're able to tackle Mayan Williams, he's still falling forward for an extra yard. That's the sign of every great running back. They always fall forward. Love what I'm seeing out of him. And it was really cool hearing Tony Alford talk about how Mayan's developed as a running back and also developed as a young man. When he was being recruited, Alford didn't know what to think about him because the kid didn't say 2 words. And we saw that in the media too. We tried to interview him his freshman year and he wouldn't say 2 words to us. Now you interview Mayan, he's more confident, engaging personality. It's like a different kid. And Tony Alford said, which I love Tony Alford all the way across the board, the way he develops guys, the way he recruits, and just the type of man he is. But I don't think I've ever heard a coach say that. Tony Alford told us yesterday that he had to apologize to Mayan Williams during his recruitment because they kind of backed off of him. Because Tony Alford said we didn't really know what to think. And obviously they were in on guys like Bijan Robinson, who gave them a silent verbal and ended up backing out. And there were other guys they were looking at, and they had to come back around to Mayan. But originally they kind of backed off, not because they thought he was a really good running back. But when Tony went down there to recruit him, he said this kid wouldn't even talk to him really. He just thought, and Alford's like, does he really want it? Does he really want to come here? Does he want us to recruit him? And Alford just admitted, I read him wrong. And then they went back and recruited him. And Alford said that, basically mine was pissed at me is what he said. And I thought that was pretty funny. And Alford admitted that he had to apologize to mine. Like, I misread you. And now, I mean, Mayan can't say enough nice things about Tony Alford. He looks at him as a father figure. They're as tight as a player and a coach could possibly be. Really cool story there. The way Mayan Williams is running the ball is the coolest part of the story. But hearing that background of his recruitment, also really cool. He was committed to Iowa State. Matt Campbell can identify some talent at running back now. I mean, look at some of the running backs they've had at Iowa State. David Montgomery, Breece Hall. And they would have had Mayan Williams if the Buckeyes didn't come in there and swoop in and were able to thankfully flip him from Iowa State. And you think, oh, well, easy to flip him from Iowa State to Ohio State, right? Not when he was already pissed off at Ohio State and felt like he was like plan C or plan D. It would have been, maybe he would have just been like, forget you guys. You didn't want me. Now you're crawling back. But Tony Alford did a great job. He didn't just come back and say, now we want you. He manned up and apologized to him. And I give Tony Alford a lot of credit for that and for admitting that to the media. Great stuff yesterday. We got Ryan Day, we got Jim Knowles, we got Tony Alford. It was like an hour and a half of awesomeness. Fantastic. So I love the way Mayan Williams is running. Credit to him. He's always looked good, but what's different about him this year, in addition to being more confident and being more veteran, is his body's in better shape. He's always been strong. I mean, as Tony Alford said, his legs are just naturally, I mean, he works at it too, but he's just naturally tree trunks for legs. Good luck trying to tackle him. And he's always been strong in the upper body too, but he needed to lose a little body fat. Now he's not only extremely strong, he's even stronger than he's ever been, but he's chiseled, I mean, he's a problem. He's a big problem for defenses because he's hard to tackle and he can make you miss. And we saw he had that 70-yard touchdown. He's not a burner, but he's got underrated speed. I'm not saying he's a 4.4 guy or anything, but listen, he's no plotter. He doesn't look like a fullback out there, does he? When he gets in the open field, he's got decent speed. That's not his forte, but I love Mayan Williams. I love the way he's running, and I'm thrilled TreVeyon Henderson's on the team too. They're going to need both of them. All right, speaking of stepping up, I think we got to give a shout out, Julian Fleming. I was wondering, is this kid ever, not because of his talent, but injuries, is he ever going to really see meaningful playing time? And then even if he is healthy, he's going to be behind Jaxon Smith-Njigba and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka, in my opinion, coming into the year is what I said. So, like, best case scenario, he's fourth wide receiver. Well, now JSN's hurt. Marvin Harrison, is getting a little bit extra attention. Julian Fleming's been balling out, and it's great to see. I mean, number one wide receiver in the country coming out of high school, even though he was in the same class with Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and you could make the argument JSN should have been the number one wide receiver, but Fleming was the number one ranked wide receiver in the country in that 2020 class. And now he's playing like it. And what's fun about Julian Fleming? I mean, they're using him. We had a source in the boarding house talking about this. We have an X's and O's expert who went into detail about this. At times, they're basically using Julian Fleming as a tight end to crack down on linebackers. I mean, this guy he's an Evan Spencer type blocker. Do I need to say any more? He's an Evan Spencer type blocker. Evan Spencer, who took out two Alabama linebackers, Trey Priest and another one on that Ezekiel Elliott 85-yard run through the heart of the South. Shout out to my friends at 11 Warriors for that t-shirt. 85 yards through the heart of the South. Evan Spencer took out two Alabama linebackers on that play. Julian Fleming is that type of blocker. I mean, he's physical. He gets after it. He's strong. And you see it after he catches the ball. He's ready. He's got all kinds of speed. He can run you over. He's a tough hombre. So love what I'm seeing out of Julian Fleming. It's good to see him. I'm happy for him that he's able to stay healthy and he's having some production. He's had to wait his turn and fight through some injuries. Now as a third-year player, he's stepping up. And Emeka Egbuka's having like an All-American type year. I feel like we're not talking about it enough. He had the muffed punt last week, and that's what everybody's talking about. But Emeka Egbuka, his stats are fantastic through 5 games. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s cooled off a little bit lately, but I love what those 3 are doing. You know, you lose the number 1 wide receiver in the country, in my opinion, in Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and the opinion of a lot of people. And you basically don't miss a beat. They did in the Notre Dame game because Ryan Day said they had a bunch of plays drawn up for number 11, and that went out the window quickly. And there was like, oh, we had a lot of plays for Jackson. But since then, they really haven't missed a beat. And that's saying a lot when you lose a player like that. Kind of reminds me of the Rose Bowl last year. You get 2 first-round picks that sit out in Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, and I don't fault them at all for sitting out. Look what has happened to many, many players in bowl games. Jake Butt, Jalen Smith, those guys ended up being first-round. I mean, Olave and Wilson ended up being first-round picks and are doing great things as rookies. So what if they would have got a serious injury in that game? You know, look what happened to Jameson Williams, although, I mean, that's a little different. That's the national championship game. But you know what I'm saying, though. You play Utah against you play a good Utah team. You have 2 first-round wide receivers sitting out, and you don't miss a beat because JSN had the best game in college bowl game history. Marvin Harrison had his coming out party, and Emeka Egbuka played well as well. So it's amazing what Brian Hartline's done with this wide receiver room, and it's just is going to keep continuing. You look at the recruiting. So there you go. Appreciate you guys joining me on this solo edition of the Bucknuts Morning 5. I know you guys have a lot of choices. As I love to say, I appreciate you guys making us a part of your morning, Monday through Friday, for the Bucknuts Morning 5. Love that you guys are loyal listeners and viewers of the show. You also can catch our post-game live podcast after every game, what we learned live. I come at you after every Ohio State game, immediately following the game. So catch me this week. It'll probably be around like 7:30, 8 o'clock. Kickoff is 4 o'clock, which is a weird kickoff time, especially for an ABC game, but that's when the game starts, a little past 4 o'clock on ABC. So I'll be with you right after the Ohio State-Michigan State game. Again, thanks very much to all of you. Really appreciate it. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.